So many of you might have already heard something really concerning about the federal Liberal government led by Mark Carney now. And that's that they're planning to not have a federal budget this year. Virtually everybody in the country was expecting a budget to be tabled because the Liberals have really not provided any sort of transparency on the state of Canadian finances in some time. This is a big concern. So again, the federal Liberals they've said that they don't intend to table a budget. And I mean, putting this really simply, you're expected to have a budget. Anybody that runs a household has a budget. So why would it be that the federal Liberals think that they shouldn't have to table a budget at all? It's actually worse than you think. So I want to walk you through just how bad the lack of transparency is with the current state of finances in the Canadian federal government. And I want you to share this video. So again, regardless of how people vote, they understand how bad the situation is and how hard it is for a member of parliament to do their job because the government just isn't being forthcoming with the state of the nation's finances. So let's go through this quickly. So the process of allocating funds to various government initiatives it's sometimes referred to as the supply process. And that supply has to be approved by Parliament. But there are situations in which the government can continue to spend without necessarily Parliament's approval. And there's a variety of different scenarios in which that can happen. But what's happened most recently, you'll remember, is that the Liberals delayed their fall economic update by several months last fall. And you'll remember that then Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, the day that it was supposed to be tabled, she resigned as Finance Minister. And the result was that there wasn't really a lot of debate on that, if any at all. The fall economic update, which was tabled in December, late, showed that the Liberal government, of which Mark Carney was a senior economic advisor at the time, had blown well past, over 50% past its already high inflationary deficit spending estimates. So over 50%, it had overshot its already crazy deficit budget. Then you'll remember that they prorogued Parliament, right? So what happened was Parliament didn't sit. It didn't sit in January. It didn't sit in February. It didn't sit in March. They shuttered Parliament so that the Liberal leadership could happen. And then they went into a federal election. So what that meant is that the government, like the executive branch of government, the federal Liberals, they essentially approved interim spending during the time without any parliamentary debate whatsoever. And that was crazy. So billions upon billions of dollars of interim spending without parliamentary approval because of the prorogation process and then because of the election. Now, I'm going to rewind one more time. This stuff was happening not with parliamentary debate, but the government last year also failed to put forward something called the public accounts. Think of the public accounts of the federal government basically as your bank statement, your checking account statement, let's say. In this case, it would be a credit card statement, but I digress. It's essentially a snapshot of what the government said they would spend money on and then what they actually did spend money on. Those were tabled, I think it was 9 months late in December, the day that Parliament rose. So I had the opportunity, I subbed in to the committee that was looking at this, and we only had one 5-minute round of questions with finance officials to look at the entirety of the public accounts and scrutinize them and ask questions about them. Billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. And then the Liberals shut down that meeting so that we couldn't question officials. So not only did they table their fall economic statement late, and we didn't get a chance to scrutinize it or debate it, but they also tabled essentially their bank account statement that they're supposed to provide to Parliament to review months late, 9 months late, and now they're saying that they won't table a federal budget and that they're just going to keep spending without any sort of parliamentary scrutiny or any sort of parliamentary debate. essentially what they're going to expect me and all MPs in the House of Commons to do is approve supply spending without reviewing the public accounts, without having a budget, without really understanding the nation state of affairs. And that's really crazy when you consider the crises that we're facing in this country right now, right? You think about the housing crisis, crime. There's a lot of foreign policy issues that are, going to be requiring the government to respond, the least of which is Canada's, deeply underserviced military. And they're going to be just saying, well, just trust us, just trust me. We're just going to keep spending, not tell you how much we're spending, not really give you a sense of the picture of where the nation's finances are at. But whatever. Oh, and by the way, we prorogued Parliament for 3 or 4 months. So, we're just going to go into the summer and don't worry about scrutinizing any of these things. I worry that, even over the summer with Parliament in theory in session, even if it's not sitting, that we're not going to have the ability to do any of these things because the Liberals, as we've seen over the last year, they've found loophole after measure to not tell you, the Canadian people, how they're spending your money, which frankly we don't even have, right? Now this is where it gets even worse. So we already have this situation where we don't really know what the nation's finances look like. We don't know how they're going to be spending the money because they're not tabling a budget. I can't even believe this. I can, but I can't believe I'm having this conversation with you because we're talking about billions of dollars here. We're talking about a nation's future. I digress. So not only were we not going to do that, they've been extremely opaque about how they are going to pay for their recent election campaign financing, right? So their recent election campaign promises, I should say. So there was an article that came out, it was during the campaign, I think, or right afterwards, and it didn't get a lot of media attention, but it was a credit rating agency that said that if the federal Liberals implemented Mark Carney's deficit spending, which was actually much higher than even Justin Trudeau's, that Canada's credit rating would be downgraded. And what that means, you guys know what it means if your credit rating drops. It's more expensive to borrow money, right? And so the debt servicing cost on all of that debt, which we don't even know really how big the debt is because the government has not been telling you this, they haven't been telling me this, that cost of servicing that debt could increase. So, and on top of all this, guys, and this is really, again, I need you to share this video so that people understand the seriousness of the situation. There's data that has come out that suggests that Canada may already be in a recession. That means that our economic growth is contracting. That means that it's less likely that job-creating companies are going to invest in creating jobs. It means people might lose their jobs. And while that's happening, there's also data that suggests that inflation, particularly in key areas like grocery prices, continues to rapidly increase, well beyond the Bank of Canada's estimates or their target for what inflation should be. So you have, on one hand, this suggestion that the Canadian economy is shrinking, but that inflation is rising, which means that the cost of living is going up while the prospects of jobs are going down and government revenues going down. You have the Bank of Canada as well saying they're not sure what they're going to do with rates in this scenario. You've got credit rating agencies saying that they might downgrade Canada's federal credit rating because Mark Carney's spending is so high. And then the Liberals are not tabling a budget. They're hiding this from you. And folks, again, I don't care how you vote. We can have debates on how and if we should spend tax dollars in Canada or go into have a deficit situation where we add to the debt. We can have political debates on that. But every Canadian should want to know exactly how much money the government is spending, how they plan to allocate that funding. Because if we don't understand that, how can we address any of these crises? How can we even have that political debate about how or if we should be spending money in certain areas? There's no budget, there's no debate to be had. And if there's no debate that's happening, that's actually deeply anti-democratic. by not tabling a budget, by, delaying the public accounts by 9 months and then proroguing Parliament for months and months. I mean, it's now, 5 months since I sat in that room for 5 minutes with the finance deputy minister and got 2 questions in on billions of dollars of spending. That's I'm being prevented from doing my job, right? As a member of parliament, I was just elected. I was given close to a 60% mandate by my community to fight for them on these issues. But if the federal government is just blocking all of this information, they're blocking my ability to scrutinize their decisions. How can I even vote on these issues in the House of Commons? They're asking me to stand in the House of Commons and vote one way or the other on information that I just don't have because they won't put it forward. And that's anti-democratic. So, let's say you voted Liberal in the last election, or NDP, or whatever. Let's say you didn't vote Conservative. I'm talking to you right now. We can disagree on how to spend money, but we should agree that the federal government has an obligation to provide Canadians with this information, right? And that's why I need you to share this video. The other thing is Mark Carney campaigned on, being this fiscal guru, right? He was going to save Canada with all of his economic bona fides. And day one on the job, what does he say? We're not tabling a budget. There's no plan there, right? This is just more of the exact same thing we saw under Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney's leadership as the Liberal Senior Economic Advisor, where they did everything to prevent this information from getting to you and to members of Parliament, right? So this has to be Canadians need to rise up against this. They need to say, no, there needs to be a federal budget. Now, I want to rest assured that Conservatives, we've been meeting, we've been thinking about ways and tools by which we can compel this information, from the federal government. But we also need the Canadian public, everybody from all political stripe, Liberal voters specifically, to say, no, the government has an obligation to tell the Canadian people what the state of affairs are of the nation's finances and how they plan to spend money, right? So that debate needs to happen in Parliament. That's why we have Parliament, ostensibly, right? My job is to hold the government to account, to hold the executive branch of government to account. And they need to follow through with their democratic obligation to allow me to do that. So folks, share this video. And, we're going into the long weekend in a couple of short days here. If you're talking to folks, if you're having a family gathering or gathering with neighbors over the weekend or whatever, make sure that you have a polite and respectful conversation. Sometimes it's difficult to talk about politics. I understand this, but this should be a unifying issue. Regardless of how someone votes, they should make sure that everybody would agree that we need to understand how the federal government is budgeting, how they are spending money. And for the federal Liberals to just start right out of the gate and say, no, after months of prorogation, after general election, after delaying the public accounts for 9 months last year, we're not going to have a budget. Sorry. They didn't even say sorry. They're like, we're not going to tell you. We're just going to ask Parliament to keep spending money. Maybe they won't even ask Parliament. I don't know. I mean, this is the least transparent government on finances in Canadian history. So share this video. This is what I'm going to be spending the long weekend doing, is trying to figure out ways to compel this information and to raise awareness of the fact that it's not happening. But I need you to help me get the word out. I need you to share this video, and I need you to talk to friends and say there needs to be a federal budget. There needs to be scrutiny of the public accounts, and Parliament shouldn't be, neutered by a federal government who will not do its base job of telling the Canadian public what the state of the play is for our finances and how they intend to spend money going forward. Working hard for you. Have a great day.